When we don't fully understand a new technology, oftentimes that can lead to an immediate distrust in really knowing how to use it. Just seen a survey, and the survey was from the Chronicle of Higher Education, and they polled faculty members in higher education. They said, how comfortable are you with AI? And 72% of them said not comfortable at all.
It's like was 98.75%, you cannot tell the difference. So whether the answer in the poll was given by artificial intelligence, or whether it was actually somebody sitting in New Jersey or Missouri, whatever, that was impossible to discern. That's the kind of thing to me that you just have to be aware of it. How do you put guardrails around something like that? So as everybody is racing forward, I totally understand the exuberance of just being a little bit older and having seen things. I think the need, and again, both you and Will Parsa have talked about it in terms of not just the regulatory, but how do you promote the bioethics or just the ethical? Forget about medicine and dentistry, just the ethical behavior of the whole landscape.
It's like this is the ultimate generational kind of moment, if you will, because we're at the precipice of something really big that is going to come. And according to most experts, this is going to be even bigger than the web.
Don't fall asleep at the wheel, meaning don't get left behind at the same token, right? Don't let other industries adopt AI and dentistry gets left behind. And third of all, let's continue to be critical and sort of from a regulatory and ethical perspective, just like pilots, aren't absolved from incidents under an autopilot scenario, we cannot be absolved from any incidents when AI is being used in our clinical setting. So
who are coming from across the world was incredible. To have a poster next to me from Brazil, someone on the other side from Germany was fantastic to see, where are they at? How are they thinking about things and coming into the space to do it?
All right. Let's go.
Beautiful.
Welcome to the Pulp Podcast, where we talk about all things dentistry and non-dentistry from a generational perspective. I'm joined today with my co-hosts. Dr. Ann Koch is joining us from the beautiful West Palm Beach Gardens and Palm Beach Gardens down in Florida, and Dr. Parsa Shahidi, who's here in the studio. And we also have a new guest co-host here, Dr. Roene Nasr. I guess soon to be a doctor, but we consider all our dental students already doctors.
I'm honored. We're working hard out here.
That's terrific. That's wonderful. And we have, for the first time, Parsa, a repeat guest. And who could be a better guest than the guest that we have today? So why don't you go ahead and do a quick...
Yeah, I mean, people know our repeat guest today, but just in case you don't, which I doubt that's the case, we have our esteemed and beloved Dean of Harvard School of Dental Medicine, Dean Giannobile. Welcome back. Good to see you. How are you?
Good to see you, Parsa. Oh, glad to be invited back. This doesn't always happen when I meet with people. So thank you so much.
We're happy to have you here today. And I think, Dr. Nasseh, today we want to talk a little bit about what an amazing event we had just a short while ago at the second inaugural Harvard Dental AI Symposium. Today is the day to talk about that and give our viewers a little bit of an idea what happened there. How was it?
Well, yeah, it was fantastic. It was really the energy that we had in the room, and then all of the workshops, the research poster sessions, seeing our students, our staff, our faculty, and people from 46 different countries all over the world present with us in Boston. It was an exhilarating experience.
Wow. 46.
It was incredibly well attended, and I thought there was a great lineup of speakers, keynotes, and other people. Annie did not get a chance to attend. The three of us were there. So
I have a lot of questions. The kind of macro questions, because I think also probably a little bit of a difference to the three people with you, Will. I'm still a little cautious about AI, like a lot of people. And then I'm going to talk about some of the things I have. That's especially on some of the valuations and things like that, and how much money is going into these data centers and that kind of stuff. But that's different than dentistry. So my real question to you about this is when you put together this symposium, how did you make it? Did you make it totally macro, general AI and dentistry, or did you go into really specific dental things like diagnosis and endodontics, or diagnosis and periodontics? How did you come to that decision, how to make the format what it was?
Yeah, Andy, good question. As we think about, so this was our second global symposium on AI in dentistry. And so as a part of this process, we learned from our first symposium, and we recognize there's a tremendous amount of energy, excitement about AI, and really it's across all industries. And so what we did in our first symposium is really blend together leading keynotes from individuals who are in cross-cutting areas. And so we had this, again, with this symposium with Karim Lakhani from Harvard Business School, Jim Weinstein from Microsoft Health, is those two keynotes. And then we brought on board students. We had about 90 different student presentations. Roene, she had one of them that was recognized. And then we had workshops, hands-on workshops on using AI. And then the three focus areas to your question were on clinical practice AI, which we know there's so much interest in this particular area. And then looking at dental education in AI, and then the regulatory landscape and the bioethics. And then at the very end, we had lightning talks with people who had cutting edge information that they presented, 7-8 minute talks for areas of interest. So we felt like, there was something for everyone. And at the same time, as you said, really trying to understand where we sit with AI right now, because it's changing by the day.
And, one of the things, everybody's so siloed. So as soon as you have any disagreement with something, right away you're labeled a dinosaur or something like that. Or then people will say oh my God, it's just like TV, or it's like your regular computer. We all know it's certainly not anything like the cathode ray TV or your computer. But one of the things that you mentioned my concern is not about what it can do in all these different fields. My concern is you talked about it at the end of your little intro there, Will, is the regulatory and the bioethics. My biggest concern with AI, and I think that's why having such a symposium as such a reputable institution is so important, because to me, as someone who is nowhere near as high tech as the people around you, I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, I think there's an opportunity here for some unsavory behavior. And again, maybe that's because I'm not totally ignorant in this, but I think the regulatory aspect and the bioethical is something that really needs to be addressed.
Right. Well, it's something, when we don't fully understand a new technology, oftentimes that can lead to an immediate distrust in really knowing how to use it. I had just seen a survey, and the survey was from the Chronicle of Higher Education, and they polled faculty members in higher education. They said, how comfortable are you with AI? And 72% of them said not comfortable at all, or just have a limited level of comfort in teaching it. And
I'm totally there.
Everyone knows it's important, and we need to learn much more about it. And so when I see someone like Roene, our younger generation, they're growing up with it, and they're understanding it actually much better than the senior set of individuals on being able to adjust to it. And so we could talk at length about the bioethics and regulatory landscape. One of our speakers at the symposium even said, when we first had calculators and using them for trigonometry, everyone was worried that we would never learn how to do math. And it's the same thing, I think, with AI. We have to use it.
Yeah.
Because, the way that I think people are looking at it, and Dr. Koch, to your point, we used to ask calculators to calculate things for us. Now we're asking AI to think with us. And I think what the symposium did, and I think we touched on this a little bit, is it set up like kind of the beginning of the symposium for those who didn't attend. The idea was that we heard an amazing talk from Dr. Karim Lakhani, who gave us a sort of overview of AI in terms of what's happening outside the field of dentistry, across healthcare, maybe a little bit of dentistry. It sort of opened up people's eyes to what's happening, and the theme of don't fall asleep at the wheel, which I think we should talk about. And then we got into these different sort of subcategories that I think, regulatory and how to actually implement it, computer vision, diagnostics, the research that we saw.
Yeah.
What would you say, to all of you, what were some of the highlights that you would tell our audience from your experience at the symposium? What was the best?
Well, maybe I'll flip this to Roene in
Yeah.
terms of from the student perspective as a participant and a presenter.
Totally.
What were some of the aspects that really attracted your attention? I'd like to, because everyone, Annie didn't have a chance to attend, but just to hear your perspectives attending the meeting.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. I mean, to be in a space where so much is being talked about, where we see a lot of it on the media, we get bits and snippets of it in class, I think our professors are starting to address it and recognize it, because I think what our school does such a good job of is kind of staying with what's going on. And I can tell even professors are starting to implement things into the syllabus. It's being talked about in class, absolutely. But to be in a space where research was coming up, to hear about the innovative kind of concepts that people are bringing in from all spaces, diagnostics, imaging, treatment, all these kinds of things. Great to have a hands-on kind of place to engage with that as a student, because I think, like you were saying, I think it looks a little bit different for us. Education, even like coming into the clinic, coming into the space, I'm really curious to see how things will shift as our generation navigates, entering like the hands-on component of dentistry and not just like the classroom setting. So being able to do some research, present it, get some feedback from people who are coming from across the world was incredible. To have a poster next to me from Brazil, someone on the other side from Germany, was fantastic to see, where are they at? How are they thinking about things and coming into the space to do it? I think I actually was curious to think about your guys' thoughts on the flip end. As students, I think instead of maybe a little bit of concern, I think we're just very excited. And I think we should be. There is some healthy level of concern that should exist. But I think a lot of different generations were excited. But how do you guys feel about that excitement and that balance that we should and can strike with AI as it rises and kind of enters our spaces? We're all working in different areas.
To me, it feels like this is the ultimate generational kind of moment, if you will, because we're at the precipice of something really big that is going to come. And according to most experts, this is going to be even bigger than the web, right? So it's a really, really big deal. So Annie's concerns are very valid, and that probably highlights why there is this generational gap, which is the youthful optimism and our generation, Annie,
irrational exuberance.
Obviously, we've seen more things go wrong, and so we tend to be a little bit more jaded. But what's interesting is that I feel like this particular conference kind of reminded me of every time there is an iPhone release with the Apple, they always say this is the best we've ever done, but the next one's going to be the best one, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Because it's just the kind of thing that is going to improve with time. We're at such a nascent level of this technology. There's no other way. It's going to get better and better every year. But I think for this particular one, for me, it was just a good sense of understanding that so many people, as you said, Roene, are interested, coming from all over the world to attend this conference. It's kind of a moment of bringing everyone together to talk about something that is going to be a defining moment for all of us. And I think while I could probably confess that, there is still not too many things in dentistry that are related specifically to AI yet, to the level that we would be expecting when you go to a regular conference, that is. But just the foundational work in creating the networks and all that stuff is just so important. Yeah. What about yourself, Parsa?
It's a good point, because, I think it's so early and it's evolving so much that we know what we're getting will be different in a year. But I think what's so important is, if you are an adopter of technology or digital innovation, that you're there and you're experiencing sort of the giants of our industry or the giants across the AI field, like Karim Lakhani, help us understand how to navigate it, right? And so one of the most important takeaways was this concept of don't fall asleep at the wheel.
Right.
He talked about, how in our space, maybe we might look at it in four ways. One is, we cannot rely entirely on the things and the insights that AI is giving us. That's number one. Number two is don't fall asleep at the wheel, meaning don't get left behind at the same token, right? Don't let other industries adopt AI and dentistry gets left behind. And third of all, let's continue to be critical and sort of from a regulatory and ethical perspective, just like pilots, aren't absolved from incidents under an autopilot scenario, we cannot be absolved from any incidents when AI is being used in our clinical settings. So to me, being there and understanding how people are looking at it, he talked about partnering with Procter & Gamble and BCG and these massive institutions, the financial services and engineering. We can just learn how to adopt it better in our space, I think. And that was a takeaway for me. And I'll just add this one other thing and ask you guys how you feel. But, the international ecosystem of AI is, especially across some of the Asian countries, they're moving so fast. And it's always interesting to talk with some of those folks. And we had a lot of those kind of pioneers from South Korea and Japan and trying to visit us as attendees. Hearing how they're implementing the research in dentistry with AI is absolutely phenomenal. I don't know if you guys saw anything that was interesting to you about that, or if you've heard anything about that during the conference.
Well, one of the things that was a little bit concerning to me, I was reading an article last week, and it was talking about research, and they were talking about how polling can be so adversely affected. When you have those, are you a robot type of things? No, I'm not a robot. That's easy to discern. But with AI and a real human, 98.75%, you cannot tell the difference. So whether the answer in the poll was given by, artificial intelligence, or whether it was actually somebody sitting in New Jersey or Missouri, whatever, that was impossible to discern. That's the kind of thing to me that you just have to be aware of. And how do you put guardrails around something like that? So as everybody is racing forward, I totally understand the exuberance. Just being a little bit older and having seen things, I think the need. And again, both you and Will Parsa have talked about it in terms of not just the regulatory, but how do you promote the bioethics or just the ethical? Forget about medicine and dentistry, just the ethical behavior of the whole landscape.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a challenging area. The last session of the symposium really focused on regulatory and bioethics, and the Food and Drug Administration is putting some of the guardrails in place and looking at how AI is used, in particular for computer vision. There are a myriad of companies that have come together on computer vision, looking at radiographs. We understand there are more dental radiographs than there are medical radiographs. And so there's so much digital information that's out there, and really setting up those standards as it relates to that particular area. But I think so many other aspects to it. When we talk about dental education, educational programs, there can be this cognitive deskilling. So this being asleep at the wheel, over relying on AI to make some of these decision-making aspects. And so we have to be very careful with that. As you mentioned, Annie, now they have these call centers where it's AI bots. They sound, as you said, very human.
Yeah.
And if you look at from college admissions to now dental office staff, and one of the compelling areas at the meeting was several people said within the next 2 to 3 years, the back office of the dental office and even some of the front office aspects will be replaced by AI. And it's going to be a challenge.
I think both you and I realize dental schools and people like yourself, deans of medical schools and dental schools, have to set a standard for the bioethics. I'm not concerned about any medical and dental school or professional school. I'm concerned about the people who are on the other side of the equation. So when I was reading this about how polling is at jeopardy, that's a big issue, right?
Yeah.
It's not just whether you like this movie or not, but when you think about how much polling is done in all different manners of research. So I think as this thing, and again, the process, you said there's trillions of dollars being put into things. I think the whole concept and the awareness of having some guide rails, I think, is paramount.
Yeah, I think speaking of big takeaways, one of the most interesting kind of statements made during the symposium was how, as humans, we are so used to thinking linearly, and AI is completely breaking the way that we're thinking about things now, because it is just growing exponentially. And almost for us to conceptualize what things are going to look like in the future is almost beyond us still, even at this point, to even consider what could 2, 3, 5 years look like. I mean, did you feel a difference between the first and second symposium even in what you're seeing? And do you have any thoughts on even what the next one might bring?
That's a great question.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good question because just in 2 years,
Right.
there was a dramatic leap in terms of what is out there. I do think that now with the consolidation of dental practices and DSOs,
Oh, yeah.
these practices are networked now, and many of them have AI already implemented. So seeing how widespread it is within the dental practice community is actually quite widespread.
Interesting.
And so that was a big jump, and then just seeing the realities of, so Dr. Lakhani showing the avatars of himself.
Yeah.
You know, I may be replaced as a faculty member. But, you know, if I want to talk about a different topic, it was quite compelling
Yeah.
to see those avatars.
That was really nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's exciting, you know, and I'm even thinking when you ask about the change from 2 years ago to now,
Yeah.
and we're already going to be planning another one in 2 years, but we're going to start seeing this changing so much, and AI will be involved in everything.
Right.
You know, to have a standalone symposium on AI will probably not happen because it's so integrated into everything that we're doing.
Interesting.
Every industry needs to have it. But at least right now, you know, we feel that we're in quite a fortunate position at Harvard University. You know, the Kempner Institute for Natural and Artificial Intelligence is really a leading AI entity on aspects relating to the natural intelligence neurosciences to AI, and so much of it is in the support and training of the next generation. So with that, we still are in a wonderful climate and ecosystem here at Harvard that we can continue to hopefully convene these programs in the future.
Yeah, that's been exciting. Actually, listening to Bernardo in the previous meeting talk about the natural intelligence and how it comes together was exciting. But to your point, Roene, with the, you know, things are changing, and then there is an acceleration of change, and then there is an acceleration of the rate of change as well. So it's like a compounding effect. So things are really moving fast, Annie. So it's like, as you said, we don't know what's going to happen. So it's interesting because this year I'm running the Odontological Society, which is 148 years old. So at the last meeting we had, I brought up this point, and I said, you know, we just celebrated our 148th year anniversary, and we co-founded. That's a nice segue because Parsa and I co-founded this AI society at the school, and I was saying that it's interesting if we look at this society, the AI society that was just founded, in 148 years, where is it going to be? It's just
oh my God.
I don't want to know.
Unfathomable, right?
Yeah.
But hopefully using AI, we'll all be very much
we'll still be
alive,
present, yes.
all of us, to see the evolution of that.
We'll be I'll be uploaded right to the cyberspace.
He's going to be officially James Cameron's successor at that point. Dr. Nasseh will go from end to
We'll have like AI podcast versions of us still playing and
that's
producing
right.
more content.
That's exactly true. But it's like the whole idea of education and the avatar thing that one of the highlights, again, for the audience who didn't get a chance to attend and hopefully will attend next time, is one of the keynotes, Dr. Koch, in Dr. Lakhani's keynote, he did this amazing kind of video showing himself, having not recorded this thing, basically representing his look and his sound and everything that represents who he is in an avatar format, speaking in another language. Yeah. And it showed a few things. It showed, number one, that we can do that using generative AI and using basically some of the amazing image and video processing power we have with AI. But also, he was trying to prove a point, and that point was, in the first example he showed, the video, the sound of the words he was saying and the actual movement of his lips weren't matched. Yeah. So this was to the point of don't fall asleep at the wheel, don't delegate something, don't let AI create something and then don't even take a look at it, monitor it. Mm-hmm. And it made me think about something that Dr. Nasseh has been talking about actually now for about a year or so, which is how can we use this in education. But I see this as like for folks like you, Dean Giannobile, Dr. Nasseh, Dr. Koch, who spend so much of your time teaching and educating the youth, and your time is so limited. This could be an amazing way to sort of clone and replicate you guys to be able to get more insights. How does this make you feel? Is this something you'd be interested in doing? Would you be open to it?
By the way, that's what I always say. If you ever see me online doing anything in any compromising position, it's not me.
Just say it's AI.
It's my AI.
Right. Exactly.
But yeah, even his second point, that first video was maybe a 4-month difference between the second, and the second one was that was almost scary. It was like, wow, this is as if you could have convinced me. He had just came in and filled that.
By the way, this podcast is being translated to different languages by AI.
Wow.
So I was just going to say.
I like that. I mean, we can do it in Spanish if you want. But,
Right.
So yeah, I guess the question is that something as educators and leaders in the space, do you think that, is that where you see the field of going in education and AI, like maybe kind of allowing experts or subject matter experts to kind of like use AI to the effect of educating our students? Is that something you've thought about, and maybe not?
Yeah, I think it's going to be very helpful in supplemental learning and tutoring. And so this is already occurring at Harvard Business School as a part of the Harvard Innovation Labs. So they actually have these tutors that come in as a part of continuing education courses. After they have listened, it could be you or I, talking, if they've got enough information about us, they can fairly well predict how you're going to respond to certain case scenarios. And so it can be very helpful in the pre-planning and, working out different scenarios of challenges. And then when you actually have the meeting, coming together to talk to the professor and to hear directly from them. But they've shown some examples from the innovation labs. And along those lines, I might give an example that was presented in one of the workshops, and maybe you've seen this by Dr. Jennifer Chen, Hiroe Oyama, and Peter Greco, and they gave a workshop on cavity preparations. I don't know if you had a chance to see that, but it shows how you can look at all the dimensions of a cavity preparation, and there are rubrics, right, on how much occlusal reduction, the chamfer, and all these aspects, and then scanning it through an optical image, and then coming up with that information that you could do in the middle of the night, working on your crown prep. Then the next day you have the faculty member.
Wow.
But there's a report that would be generated. So I think this is where we'll be headed. And again, to Annie's initial point, we do have to have the guardrails on that. We just have to have transparency on how this information is being used and transmitted. Because again, we don't have robots completely doing everything on our preparations and endodontic fills, but you're the one who's responsible as the clinician. Yeah.
It's interesting because outside of the dental realm, I'm not intimidated by AI in terms of having a robot knock on my door and take me away, stuff like that. What I am concerned about is, especially as people age, it's a natural part of the aging progression. People are very concerned about protecting things. And when we think of how many people have hacked into major companies, have surpassed security, and that's just with computing. And now, to me, I mean, you guys, I'm sure, would feel the same way. AI offers so much more capability than just merely computing. How do we protect things when you have somebody who is as equally smart as your people, but doesn't necessarily share the same motives?
Yeah,
it's a good question. And when we had our regulatory session, and I'd be interested to hear your feedback, it's almost like with new intellectual property and you have patent attorneys working on your new invention. Now we have many people within the legal profession, and we had an expert in that particular domain on how do we protect this. And it's so challenging right now, this landscape.
And it's going so fast. I mean, it's insane.
Exactly. I mean, there's no question there has to be some level of regulation because, as you said, Annie, we now know these AI agents and bots can do all kinds of nefarious things, right? And soon enough, if you get quantum computing for some reason, somehow, and it becomes, available at mass level, then it's a lot of bets are going to be off because it could do so many calculations and crack so many passwords. But I think cybersecurity has always been about this stuff. So, I'm sure there are cybersecurity firms that are focusing on the interaction and kind of a transposition of AI and its capability on the current existing infrastructure of the net. And I'm sure they will have to be, and that's probably where the government comes in, is where they're going to probably have to allow certain allowances or something like that so that they can make sure that AI doesn't get out of hand, because it certainly can.
Ali, I have a quick question for you. All these things, who's paying for this?
That's a good question.
So-
Not me.
Anybody running for? Well, there's an act actually underway
Stop
right
the
now.
panel.
Dr. Koch, to your point, I was listening to CNBC this morning before the clinic, just to get a little dose of something different than dentistry.
Yeah,
And
the futures
they're
give you a
actually
little
in the
boost.
middle. Yeah, they're in the middle of lobbying, some of like the big tech companies for a set of bylaws to rush it through Congress because of this exact topic. And I think just when we focus in on our industry and our profession, one of the benefits of a symposium like this is to, really educate people who either are really bullish on it, like I think everyone here is highly bullish and into the notion and focus on AI, but there's also people who want to learn and people who are on the other end of the spectrum. So our job, hopefully, within our ecosystem in our schools to educate people on what's happening. Now, then it becomes a question of bad actors versus good actors that one of our keynotes talked about. And then it becomes a derivative of recruiting. Can you get enough smart people to be on the good side
So
to
true.
fight against the bad actors, some of these cyber criminals and whatnot?
Right.
And in our space, it's I think there's enough good happening across research, across diagnostics and treatment planning that I think people are excited enough. But one thing that I'm curious about is the guidelines that we need to set up. The question becomes: is this something that should be a federal mandate, should be a state by state, local organization mandate, or should it be
International body. you would think at
international
some
body?
level,
I know.
right?
What do you think about in dentistry? How could that look given the way that our organizational dentistry is structured? What would it look like?
To me, doesn't it feel like dentistry is just, we are essentially surfers, we're riding the wave. We have no control over the wave itself. So the real question here is, and what Annie's alluding to, is the issue of how do we manage the wave? We're just one of many surfers, if you will, right? So in our profession, we're just using the technology, but the question is far deeper, the fundamental aspects of the technology and how that affects dentistry as well as every other field. And that is really the main question that has to be addressed. I think once that foundational stuff is laid down, then dentistry will, like every other field, probably be safer. But I don't know, unless, are you aware of anything, Will, that is happening at the, ADA or any of these things that are...
Yeah, I think all of the authoritative bodies within dentistry, they're all trying to wrap their arms around it right now. So American Dental Association, it was even probably 5 years ago that they were putting together guidelines on how oral maxillofacial radiology programs need to be including AI as a part of their training. I've been at 2 different international conferences recently they were consensus conferences, and they both included AI components with them. These were within periodontology. I'm a periodontist, but we've also seen with the World Health Organization, they have a network, and at the symposium we had several members of this network, and really trying to come to grips with how it's going to be used. So I agree with what you're saying, is that we're still trying to figure it all out, and we're really relying heavily on many of these other regulatory experts, but the genie's out of the bottle, if you will, with a lot of these technologies and how they're going to be used appropriately.
Yeah, but something very
I
nice.
kind of go back to my question.
Oh yeah, please.
Who's paying for this? How does this get subsidized?
Organizations, and obviously at some level it should be the government as a whole, the federal government. And
The reason I say that is, like, if you follow the economics of this, and that's a whole nother discussion. I mean, Parsa, 6 or 7 companies comprising 37% of the Dow. That's kind of that's never happened before. So I think what's crazy is that there's mid-level investment houses in New York that are now floating out $1 trillion. And to me, Will, I'm kind of like, I remember billionaires. What happened to that decade? We gone from the B world to the T world, right? And so this is what happens, Roene, when you age. You start trying to go back and circumspectly look at things and rethink things. I'm trying to think like, this is all wonderful, but at the end of the day, it's kind of a zero-sum game. Who's funding this? Who's paying for this? Where does that factor into the entire thing?
Yes. Well, I don't have a good answer for you on that one, Annie. I will say, Ali and I, we were at a clinical innovation advisory board meeting, and Parsa, you presented at it. Nice. And an individual who was leading the biomedical accelerator at Harvard University was talking about the investment in biomedical research. It's really biotechnology. There's been a major drop in the investment. 50% investment really going into AI. So there's so much investment into this area. And so to really understand who is going to be paying and regulating all of this AI technology, we need someone from the investment banking group to join us as well.
The data center thing to me is incredible.
I mean, the development of these ideas and things is just like capitalism. So there's modules of people using private investment to create the tools. But the overseeing of the way these things interact to create potential security threats for everyone, it's kind of like the same thing maybe in the defense industry, right? I mean, you got private companies creating all kinds of things that could be potentially nefarious, and there is some level of oversight at the federal level with these things, except that now it's moving from that into technology.
Yeah. What were you going to say earlier?
I was going to say something interesting and something great that I think that Harvard did, especially for their students, is they offered us an AI sandbox. And so we have a space where we have access to Claude, GPT-4, kind of all those big engines that you could be, giving your data to. But they said, no, here's a safer space where you can kind of put your guys' stuff here for now till we have a better handle on where everything's at.
Yeah, it doesn't share with them. Yeah.
Right, because there's always the big question of where is all my information going? And that's, and a great thing they said at the talk was, if you're using Google Chrome, you don't care about your privacy. I thought that was really funny, but it's true. We don't think a lot about this stuff, but to have institutions that are willing to give you a safer place to kind of keep things for now till we all have a better read on where we're at is honestly like a really nice thing. And I think, to some degree it does fall into the institutional level, and I can imagine it beyond, and I'm sure there's eventual collaboration between.
Roene, that brings up a great question I think, in the sense that Ali addressed it earlier in terms of a generational thing. But all right, everything's coming. Well, what happens to the provider who's 55 years old? How do they become more educated about the benefits and the applications and the use of AI? I threw that out not as a rhetorical question.
That would be the job of the companies, I guess, Annie, to provide the education to bring people up to par. I mean, they may or may not. And if they don't, then I'm sure there would be third parties that would take up that task of educating people about AI. There certainly are a lot of places people can take AI courses and so on. But maybe one that would be, and that's actually an interesting thing, maybe that could be, hey, there we go, that's an idea for ourselves. Create a module to educate dentists about the use of AI.
I was just thinking about don't take your eyes off the ball. Yeah. I think that's incredibly sage advice.
I think it's obvious that it's education, coming up with continuing education programs that can really lift everyone up. And I think in larger organizations, even the development of an AI health officer, somebody either within a hospital setting, many people are hiring digital gurus with digital workflow in the dental office, someone who is also facile with AI, because it's so difficult to keep up with it. I mean,
that's brilliant.
That's a brilliant idea. Position we're even looking at the Harvard School of Dental Medicine. How can we have digital experts who are on top of this as much as possible? We're trying to inculcate, within the community that we all need to be involved with it. But as you're saying, the 55 plus cohort, how can we get them up to speed on this?
It goes back to the poll that you said about 77% didn't trust it. It's, usually we don't trust things we don't know. And then that's the key, is how do we get to learn more about it?
Right. So your point, Giannobile, is so important, because this happened during the .com boom. I'm sure the advent of the CTO, Chief Technology Officer, whose main job function was software development, and then it became Chief Innovation Officer, which is bridging software to the next level, and now we're at the Chief AI Officer point. But one of the things, Dr. Koch, you said, how do we get the word out? How do we educate this cohort, maybe age specific? Well, it's events like this, I think, is important. You have to have cutting edge institutions lead the charge, but also on that topic, one thing that I think one of the great speakers of the symposium, and I'll maybe do a quick shout out, Dr. Schwendicke, one of the top researchers in the world in this subject, super knowledgeable. He talked about how, and he's been talking about this idea of like a benchmark of a ground truth. So, when a company walks into a practice and is trying to sell their imaging software and it says it performs 87% accurately, what is that compared to sort of the average general dentist? Is it, how is that data being trained? So the clinicians, the doctors don't really know what they're being sold. And so what he's been calling for as a call to action internationally is a benchmark, basically this data set, this consortium of data where every product or company that deploys a product can actually compare against this data so they can be convinced or empowered with the information that it performs better than this standard. So Dr. Jones, who's never used AI in their life and she's 63 years old, can be sort of educated on how these things are performing relative to some sort of standard status quo.
Right.
Yeah.
But doesn't that create a challenge? Because in dentistry, we are lacking that information even among natural intelligence, so much among artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
I mean, there is the standards of care are questionable, as you see from even one state to another, they may change. In our field with endo, for example, what the kind of practice you have in the coasts is very different than the kind of practice you have in the central part of the U.S. So that might, this could be an opportunity for war and chaos, or it could be an opportunity to bring people together to kind of agree potentially at some point as to what constitutes standard of care, right? I mean, crown preps, different philosophies, different ideas, different people do different things, right? I mean, whatever we train the AI with is going to essentially be the future of the truth, right? I mean, because truth is unknown and we're all seeking it, but the question is those people who have access to training AI are going to control the narrative and are going to essentially redefine the profession in many ways, because they're the ones who are going to essentially, based on the training and based on their own manipulation of the data, are going to create the reality that all of us will have to embrace, whether we want it or not.
Wow. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is for Will. How do you, as the dean, manage to integrate AI into the basic curriculum that we've had for many years? It's got to be an incredible undertaking.
Right. I feel very fortunate. We have a strong partnership with Harvard Medical School. So, Roene, you've gotten some of this education that's really bundled into Harvard Medical School, which really is a leading institution to really help at the very early stages of a student's training career. And then we are doing our best to keep up. We can't say that we're, so far ahead of any other place because it is constantly changing. I was just chatting with Sang Park. She's co-leading a task force on AI and dental education. Awesome. And so we've been looking to provide support for projects within the faculty to develop educational materials. So I gave the example on the preclinical, models using those, but it is a challenge, and we really need to help lift the boats, if you will, in terms of getting more and more people educated within AI. It's all about education and providing investment in our faculty to get those skill sets, and then Parsa, like this AI society, getting it reciprocally from the student community, and the students inspire us, and the students are discovering things every day. And so that's where we're fortunate to have, our colleagues, our budding colleagues, and you'll be our student doctors to really help building that culture of AI is crucial to dental education and the advancement of our profession. And so, we're not there yet, but it's a work in progress. And I think now that everyone at the school knows you got to be involved with AI at some level, and how are you going to build it into your education, be it clinical or preclinical didactic.
That's like really the crux of the issue, right? I mean, all destinations start with a vision. It's your vision and leadership of the school is aligned with that idea of incorporating AI to the extent possible in dentistry. Correct?
Right, absolutely.
So that's,
amazing.
The rest of it is just
that's
realizing.
Really amazing. We can say maybe from our perspective that's amazing to hear. And I think that's just, it gives a lot of confidence and I think excitement to maybe the younger generation, because I think we feel strongly that this is going to be sort of such a dominant force, just like the advent of the internet. This is even bigger than that, as you said, Dr. Nasseh. So to hear, Dean Giannobile, Dr. Nasseh, Dr. Koch, you guys say that, give us that empowerment, I think it means a lot, right?
It's huge. I mean, even seeing it, I'm seeing it in the classroom. So it's a really interesting concept. We'll prepare for a course, we'll take the course, and then we'll consolidate parts of the course. And part of the consolidation that we were seeing was you would be presented a case. Case would be patient presents, blah, blah, blah. You can then interact. They created an AI tool, Harvard specific, as a consolidation exercise. You ask the patient questions, like past medical history, chief concern, what are you feeling? It'll answer it for you. Then you'll move in to order your tests. It'll tell you, okay, this is available, this is not available. Then it'll give you all the results. You'll then piece the puzzle together. You'll give it your diagnosis. It'll give you a rating out of 6. Such a cool concept to be sitting down, taking the information that we're learning in school and having a chance to practice asking questions that you can't really do without someone else there to talk back at you and get that in real time. You can't, how sometimes you can like cheat on the sheet and like try and check you can't get that. You really got to work your way through some of the questions. And just to see that and to be in the space where I'm starting to practice using the tools, starting to see how they could be used in action, but also to be at an institution where I think that we don't just say yes. And so seeing my classmates, question the sustainability of AI, seeing my classmates question how much we even should be relying on it, because we look at the faculty ahead of us, and I mean, we look up to you guys incredibly, and we want to, be able to get there also, with our efforts in our own hands. And so it's very important, I think, to find that balance too. And so I think it's very unique position to be, to feel the support, which is so wonderful, and to feel that healthy level of skepticism and confidence and everything, but also just to see the things that you're all building between the AI Symposium, the HSDM AI Society. How are you guys feeling now, bringing these new groups, this new, big event kind of moving forward? What do you see it changing for the way we're thinking about things? Anything you guys are looking forward to coming up with any of it?
I think it's the same kind of idea as what Will's vision was, what bringing people together.
Yeah.
It's in some ways, in all of these efforts, the idea is the understanding that no one person can know it all, and that the collective together as a network could do a lot better than each individual. So the more people, the better. So creating a society, creating a symposium, putting together groups of people together that could exchange ideas. That's really the essence of everybody working together to do better together. It's just a cooperative thing that is, I think, the basis of these efforts. So what do you think, Parsa? What was your vision?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the beginning, and I think you need a little bit of fuel on the fire to get these ideas deployed and underway, and I think we've been able to sort of start doing that with your leadership and the symposium. I know today we're really talking about how the symposium was and recapping, and I think to put it in a nutshell, it was a hell of a weekend for anybody who's bullish on AI. And I would as the next one comes around in a couple of years, we'll do this again. But my call to action to anybody listening is try to learn more about it, try to watch as many videos about it, try to talk to as many people as possible about this idea, because I think, as you said, Dean Giannobile, it's here to stay, and there's pretty much no turning back.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think it's incumbent on all of us to kind of contribute and share our ideas. And maybe Annie's idea of putting together a little thing to create and improve, AI literacy for dentists is not a bad idea.
I think it's important. We're all pretty connected within the school, but what about beyond? Definitely.
I have a question, and again, this is probably most directed towards Will, and that is about partnerships. I think one of the wonderful things about doing this is doing this within a university setting, of course. Has the dental school established some partnerships? Obviously, I would assume with the med school, but have you been involved with HBS? Has anything come out of them or out of the public health school, Will?
Yes, I mean, absolutely. I mean, as we can expand the network, as has been just discussed with other schools, the business school. So I gave an example of, I had the opportunity to sit in on a Harvard Business School course on dental AI, and these business school students knew. They came in, their experiences were getting their wisdom teeth out and having orthodontic therapy. But Dr. Lakhani sat down and put together the questions on how AI could be incorporated. And all of these students, they were raising their hands, really getting involved in it. And so education and the participatory part of it. So we haven't talked so much about the patient, but when you talk about precision or personalized medicine, it's how we can get more and more people engaged on their oral health, and how AI can really help support that. And so engineering, other schools, educational programs are important, but industry, the governmental sector, and then this patient community. How do we better engage patients? And so I think patients now are going to be coming even more prepared. So when they come into the office, they're not going to just look at Dr. Google, but they will have this visual, they'll have this avatar of a patient companion who's really going to help them based off of their basic or their information to help them in their own clinical decision making, because soon enough they're going to be really partnering with these individuals to help them for their healthcare delivery.
Is it fair to say, Will, that you anticipated increasing the access to care?
Yes, it should. That's, Hawazin Alani is a faculty member in our oral health policy epidemiology group, and she has really engaged in that. We wrote a paper on harnessing AI to reduce health disparities. And in that paper, the concept is we can level the playing field not only with virtual access, but with education, with clinical information. And so I think this creates a lot of exciting opportunities to engage, all components of the healthcare sector and education to advance patient care.
But do you guys feel that AI, at least in the way it is now, is already there? It feels to me like it's not. I just wanted to test it, and yesterday I put up an X-ray of a case that I had done an apical on a central incisor, just to describe what you're seeing, make a diagnosis, see what's happening.
Yeah.
And it gave me a very, very confident and detailed diagnosis and analysis of the X-ray and everything, and it was all wrong.
Well, it's hard, we're talking about expert annotation, right?
We still need it.
What I'm trying to say is that so I knew that it's wrong, but and it was it was ChatGPT 5.1, which is like the latest model.
Was it completely wrong, or was it?
It was completely wrong. So it was like every tooth that was on the X-ray had a previous root canal, and this one that I had done an apical on had a post which it didn't have a post, and that it had an infection, and it gave a complete thing on diagnosis because it was an apicoectomy, so there was like a radiolucency, but that wasn't due to the there was an infection, it was just the hole. But so it was. So to me, I just wanted to see what it's like in terms of its analysis, and so if patients are going to it and it exerts the same level of confidence in terms of making these diagnostics, that could be scary, right? So I don't know. I mean,
you made a great point to bring this together, which is like they are going to be so much more empowered with knowledge before they come in, and maybe before certain patient demographics would have access to these information and data points and little things that some other patients wouldn't because of their socioeconomic status or education. But now it's at their fingertips. But then the question becomes, what is the information that they're getting? I have to say, some of these public models that we use, like the Claudes and the Anthropics and the Geminis and the ChatGPTs, they're building themselves based on the data that they're collecting billions and billions of times a day based on the things that people are talking about and feeding it. Dentistry, I think, is still one of those domain-specific topics that hasn't been really used a whole lot.
Yeah.
So I think it's good because it provides a value for the businesses and commercial entities that are focused on that. And I won't name them, but there are a lot of great ones that are doing that, provide their own value in itself. And I mean, but I have this hunch, and I hate to say, but I have this hunch that these companies, these large companies, AI companies, probably within the next 12 to 18 months will be outperforming some of the dental specific, or let's say nephrology specific or ophthalmology specific AI companies, because the access to their data will be so much more robust and fast that it will kind of start to outpace the specific companies focus on specific domains. But I have to end with this idea that, we always compare what AI gives us as an output to what an expert is thinking. So when we talk about perio and endo, we're the cream of the crop right here, right? It's hard for them to ever, I think, let's say in the next 6, 12, 18 months, get to the point of knowledge that we're talking about top of the line experts in their spaces, thinking and perceiving this information. So it's a tall task to expect it to maybe look at things in endo like you or perio like you, Dean Giannobile, right? I mean,
absolutely.
It's not so easy, but...
No, it won't be easy. I just probably would have preferred a little bit of humility to say that, look, I'm going to give you a diagnosis, but I could be wrong. It just give a beautifully confident diagnosis with the full thing, and this is what's going on. This is what you see on the X-ray. These are the findings, and this is the full diagnosis. And this is the recommended treatment too. It kind of made a recommend because I asked for it to do all of that
funny.
stuff,
Yeah.
and it just gave it without saying that I could be wrong.
Oh, that's my biggest issue is that if I'm going to ask it a question, I hate when I ask it and I'm like, if you don't know, it's okay. Just tell me you don't know. Don't make it up. It's like, why are we creating something?
Yes. No, I mean, for patients, the buyer beware. They have to be prepared to go to the expert to get the interpretation of the diagnostic information. And so, Ali, for you to give this example, what's part of the definition of an expert is someone who's made almost every mistake possible, and they've learned from those mistakes. Yeah. And so with AI, these models are, they've got their training data, but it's not necessarily curated for every different domain.
Right.
And so they will continue to improve over time. But I think a lot of these rubrics will be for certain specific areas that'll be more cut and dry on dental caries. Yeah. That's still not even there yet. You talked about the ground truth, getting to that. But you will still need the specialists. You will still need the visual observation to, do both the diagnosis, the treatment plan, especially of some of these complex cases.
So I guess the good news for Roene and Parsa coming out of the school soon in the postdoc is that you guys are still going to have a job and be needed for a foreseeable future.
Maybe feel better.
And that way, dentistry, I think, is actually fairly safe from AI for the foreseeable future. Yeah. I'm sure during your job, I feel like a lot of experts always make these predictions that there is going to be a cure for this or that, like within the next 10 years. So much of that is driven purely by, by just the economics of things. Yeah. I remember, to just give a quick example before we end, is that I took a course at the main campus in '94 by Glimcher, who was the guy who just developed, who discovered the process of ossification. I remember we had somebody come in and give a talk to us at the time. So the course was on vertebrate skeleton and like bone physiology and all this stuff. And the person who gave a talk was talking about stem cells, which were really big at the time, right, in 1994. And he said that specifically that knee, see all these people that have knee issues and stuff like that, and cartilage issues. Within the next 5 to 7 years, we're going to have stem cells that are going to replace the whole gone cartilage. It's going to come back and this and that. And everybody in the class was awesome. One that's going to be so great. New dawn in medicine with these stem cells. Well, just the last month I was there for my knees. I went to the orthopedic.
I need some of these stem cells.
And I was like, that was supposed in 94. They said 5 to 7 years. Are we there yet? They're like, forget about that. That's not happening. So
that's true.
It's going to be a little bit of time. All right, guys. So I think it's very fruitful. The overall summary. You guys want to put that together? What do we learn from today?
Yeah, I think today's conversation, just recapping the second International AI Symposium. Dean Giannobile, thank you for putting it together. As people who are highly bullish on this and focus maybe half of my career on this, I'd say, is it was exceptional, and I really look forward to the next one. So I'm hoping that we can have a repeat of what we had this past weekend.
Oh, it'll be better. Don't forget.
Looking forward to it.
Exponentially better.
Yeah.
Yes. We're
Exponentially better. Absolutely.
Okay.
Terrific.
right.
Thank you so much, Dean Giannobile.
Thank you.
Roene,
My
Parsa,
pleasure.
and
Thank you so
Annie.
much.
And holiday greetings to everybody, and we'll see you in the next podcast.
yes.
Thank you.
All right.
Yay.
Terrific.
That was great.
Great job.
That was a great conversation, guys. Thank you so much for answering my question.
Tune in to Pulp, where stories unfold.